Today I'll be turning this massive amount of cabbage, all 16 pounds, into healthy sauerkraut. Don't be intimidated by the amount. It works in small portions just as well. So I have a pending order for 1 gallon of sauerkraut. Today is the day to whip that up. All we need is cabbage, that's quite obvious, salt, a scale, because the salt and cabbage ratio needs to be within a certain limit. Then my containers I will ferment it in. Fermenting lids and weights for the top. This is not necessary. I'll show you later on how to substitute this. And then of course a big bowl, a cutting board, and a knife. First step is to take off the blemished outer leaves if there are any. You don't want that in the sauerkraut. And then we're left with these nice and clean heads. Then we need to remove carefully some outer leaves that are nice. This is important later on to keep the sauerkraut from floating. I usually do a little more than I anticipate needing jars because some are just smaller. I have to bend them around. It ferments just like the other cabbage, so you can eat that too in the end. So with these guys set aside, it's time to start slaughtering the cabbage. This strong part needs to come out. We can't have that in there. It would be really, really tough. So I usually half it and then notch it out just like that. Put this stuff aside. You can cook that up if you like. I usually put it in the compost. If it doesn't work coming out, some of these strong parts are pretty big, then just quarter it. Do it however you can to get it out. All done cutting it apart. These strong parts are out. And now it's waiting to be processed. This looks strangely beautiful, doesn't it? I should take a picture. Look, somebody dropped the mushroom. This is called Old Man of the Woods. You wouldn't think it's edible, but it is. It's kind of pretty too. Here. Next is where the work kicks in. So of course it has to be cut in thin slivers. If you cut it this way, you get long strands of sauerkraut, right? Because they go the whole length. If you quarter it, you get the shorter strands. So that's up to taste when you cut it by hand. You want to make them fairly thin so you don't have the big chunks in it when it's all done. This takes hours and I'm not doing it that way. One way to do it is with a mandoline. So you just slice it and you're done. But I'm even lazier than that. I'll use my kitchen machine here and use the slicer top. That goes quick, makes a mess, but it goes quick. So I'm gonna get ready to run this through here, but now is decision time. Because we need to add the salt according to the weight of the cabbage we have, there are two ways. You can weigh it once the strunk's out, just take all the cabbage, weigh it and add it up and write it down. Or you can sliver it first and then weigh it, which in my opinion always takes another couple bowls to shift the stuff around to get it on the scale. So I'll weigh this up, write it down, and then I have to do the math on the salt. There, 16 pounds. Had to switch to a bigger bowl. So because I weighed it beforehand, I know exactly how much salt I will need. See, there's already cabbage everywhere. It's such a mess. Even in the salt. I know how much salt I need, and at some point when the bowl starts getting fuller, I'll just add all the salt because I know I will be able to mix it all in this bowl. It takes 3 tablespoons per 5 pounds of cabbage. There we go, and this is where it gets hands-on. You need to massage that in. It needs to break up these cell walls a little bit so that the cabbage will release the juice, because we'll be packing this in its own juice unless we don't get enough. Then we need to make a brine. But I'm gonna mix this up here for 5 minutes or 4 minutes. There's another piece of cabbage that just flew out. And then I'll show you in a little bit while I'm mixing the rest how much smaller the amount will get. How am I gonna shut this off with these 30 hands? So it's been only like 3 minutes because I shredded up a little more, and see, it's already releasing juices. You can tell it's good fresh cabbage if it does that fairly quickly, and see how much smaller the amount is now. At this point, I just start adding in and mixing up as I go. There's a little bit left. Like I said, it's this only about halfway. Most of it is already shredded. The rest is still waiting, and it goes in the same pot and mixed up. Yep, that's going to take longer to clean it up than it did shredding it. When I said earlier the trunks needs to come out, that's why. Apparently I left a little piece, I overlooked it, and these are really hard, and they're not good when they're fermented. So now all the cabbage is shredded and in here. This bowl is full. I'm going to mix this up and then let it sit for 5-10 minutes until it gets a little smaller, and then we're ready to pack. It's really tight now. The juices run out, and it's ready to get into the glasses. I find, for me, I've used these big glass containers before, but I found that the mason jars are just the easiest to control. And so you just manually put it in there. Of course, you could use a spoon, but that would take a long time. So I wash hands and use hands. And now, though, I need to show you this. I'm going to pause this for a second. So when there's about loosely half in there, you take something to push it down. I happen to have this marvelous thing. It's really old, and it's always been used for kraut. You probably be able to get your hand into the jar too, but you want to press this down and pack it down nice and tight. And you see how the juice comes up? Okay, so it needs to be as tight as possible. I'll do this for all the jars now, and then we'll top off with the juice that has accumulated now in the bowl so that it's covered up. So let me fill these real quick. I'll show you the next step. So it's all packed in, 16 pounds, filled up 4 half gallons in a quart, but you cannot fill them at this point all the way to the top. Also, this is a lot of kraut. There's absolutely no reason to make that much unless you need that much. You can take 1 small cabbage and turn it into sauerkraut. Amount has nothing to do with the fermentation, so don't be intimidated. If you've never done it, get a small cabbage and make it. It tastes so much better than the store-bought stuff in the cans or however people buy this. Now I'm going to clean this all up, and then comes the last important step, and that is to covering it up. So all I did there was take a clean paper towel and then wipe the inside of the jar all the way to the line where the kraut is. That needs to be clean. Since that is not submerged and part of the fermentation process, it can't spoil on you. So fermenting, it's okay to use your hands when they're clean, but the jars need to be clean and everything else too. Now let's get these to bed. All right, remember those cabbage leaves, the nice ones we took out? That's the last thing to top it off. You take it, and then I cut this, the hard part out because that just cracks and you can't really work with it. And then they go in, I get this on here, like this, very carefully. And before you push it down, you need to poke some holes in it with a fork, quite a few all over, so that the gases can come out and the juices can come up, so that it doesn't just float up. And then once that is in, tug in the sides all around, and that keeps the cabbage from floating up and floating on the top. And if you have a glass weight, this is the time where it goes in. As you can see, the juices come right up. Here they are lined up like soldiers. They're all filled, they all have the weight in, and I gave them another thorough clean to make sure nothing's on the edges, and of course I cleaned the outside as well. Now we need to put the cover on. We can't let this sit like this. The gnats would be in there in no time. I have fermenting lids. These are silicone things that have a hole in the middle so the gases can escape, but nothing goes in. And that's just simple. It goes on with the lid. You can put a regular canning lid on there with a band, and then you just have to burp it once or twice a day because it will build up gas inside. You don't want this thing to bust. I also want to say, see in this jar where the water level is quite high, there is a good possibility that some will spill out. So put them on a baking sheet when you store them for the fermentation period. That is much easier. And if you don't want to do the burping with the regular lids, and if you don't have fermenting lids, I'll show you another way of doing this. Give me a second. First, you put 1 or 2 rubber bands over the jar, and then you put a rubber glove over the top and put the rubber bands, put them over there so it holds it in place. Once this starts fermenting and the gases escape, of course the glove will stand up. Once it gets too big and looks like it's about to bust, or any time in between really, take a hot needle, poke a hole in the end, and that will release the gases from there on. This is a really cheap thing if you just want to experiment with fermenting and not buying any equipment. That works really well. So now I'm going to close these up, put them in a cool, dry place, and I'll keep you updated on the fermentation process. All checked and cleaned and put away. I have them in a dark hallway. There's a light on now, but that door closes and it's dark. And then I'll just keep checking on these every so often. And with the next one, I show you how you can tell it's ready. Day 1 of the sauerkraut sitting. Well, it's not sour yet, but it's kraut. And this is quite happily, oop, did you just see the bubble? This is quite happily already fermenting away. More bubbles coming. See, even the top is bulging up now. And as I said, put it on something. It's already leaking out a little. This is going to continue like this for quite a few more days, and then the fermenting action will slow down a little bit. I'll keep you updated. So here we are at day 3 of the sauerkraut operation. Let me turn this a little. This is bubbling away a lot. Okay? And that's the other jar. Remember that jar in there that I said that's probably going to spill over? That's this one. You don't want this to spill over out of the cap. This has too much in it now that the gases kind of loosen up the contents. What happens if you let this happen, it will spill over and get on your bands, which are metal, and this is acidic, so they start corroding. It's just not right. What you want is a level like this, kind of up to the neck, and then put the thing on. Also, if you use the rubber glove method, especially make sure it doesn't spill, because it's gonna get on the glove, and I just don't think that's right if the juices eat up that glove and then it's in the kraut. That can't be good. So make sure you have an appropriate level. Just check every once in a while. On this one, I will take some out now. That was for demonstration, and we're good to go. Fix that one. You can see that the brine's getting kind of cloudy now. And then if you do get floaties on top, just go in there every once in a while and get them out. But I mean, it's not that bad, but they may just turn scummy, and that's not very appetizing. All right, this is the 1 week check-in for the kraut. Things have calmed down a little. That initial outburst is gone. And this is the one with the white in it, and this one I left without white. Let me try to zoom in here. See, there's discoloration of the cabbage, of course, that's normal, but there is no mold or anything. And let me press this down. You see all the bubbles? It's still fermenting away. This isn't done yet. but the initial real, bubble over stuff, that calmed down a little now. Now, if you don't have a weight, just push it down every couple days or so the ferment juices get on top of it, but nothing should happen really. We'll let this sit for another little while because it's still going strong. And we'll check in again in a week. We're at day 16. I just took the weight out and we'll see if there's still bubbles coming up. Yep, it's still a little bit active. I'm going to push this aside because at this point it's a good idea to try it if you don't want it too sour. Oh, it's good. Crunchy. I think we're ready to take the weights out. And then I have to put it all in one pot and distribute it again, because if the customer wants 1 gallon, then she'll get 1 gallon and it'll be all filled up to the top. Look there, all this cabbage turned into yummy sauerkraut. Now this is cool, this is shelf stable. In the fridge, geez, a year, maybe more. You can can it, you lose your nutrients in it. I'm pretty sure I'll be making a video on how it's traditionally consumed in Germany, because this was normally not eaten raw. So when I had my first Reuben in the US, I actually wrote home about it saying these people are eating sauerkraut raw on the hot dog, on the sandwich. It's weird. But there are really good recipes with sauerkraut, good hearty comfort food meals. And that will probably be 2, 3, 4 recipes in another video. So now I'm going to package this up. Of course, you don't have to do this if you only made 1 jar, then just take the top layer off and start eating it, stick it in the fridge. But I want to mix it up so if there's a variation within the jar, it's all mixed up. And then I'm going to stuff these jars. And off they go. And there's some left for ourselves as well. Thanks for watching.